Thanks, Dorothy. Okay, so welcome to our second in our series, ESP Rights and Respect, How to Build a Strategic Campaign. Tonight we are going to hear from our colleagues at the Maryland State Education Association, MSEA, and we're going to go ahead and get started. Sean, could you please advance to the next slide? So as we always do at NEA, we like to start with a land acknowledgement. So tonight we begin by acknowledging that wherever we are in our state or country, we meet on traditional tribal lands. We honor America's first people, all elders past, present, and emerging. And we are called on to learn and share what we learn about the tribal history, culture, and contributions that have been suppressed in the telling a story of America. Next slide, please. So tonight we're going to set the foundation, do some introductions. We will have two separate times to ask question and answers. So there'll be plenty of time for that. I'd like to ask you to, when you do have questions, to put them in the Q&A function of the webinar. And then we will hear from our presenters in Maryland about their campaign, their Bill of Rights campaign. We'll have more time for question and answers, and then we will wrap up and ask that everyone take a survey at the end. Next slide, please. So we're at a very exciting time for ESPs in this country. There is a lot of energy around building recognition and rights and respect for ESPs. Our last webinar, we heard from the Massachusetts Teachers Association, who were sort of the first ones out of the box to start a Bill of Rights campaign. Sonia Fortin, who was an ESP member and is now the ESP staff coordinator for Massachusetts, was a participant in the ESP Leadership Institute back in 2019 when we started right before COVID with that group, as well as Jill Scarcelli from Illinois. And they were talking about sort of how they were advocating in their states for rights and respect for ESPs. And while Sonia was building the MTA program and gathering support for that program, Jill went back to Illinois and started building the ESP Respect campaign in Illinois. And Illinois will present in our third of this webinar series. MSEA heard about the great work that was happening in Massachusetts and partnered with them to learn what they were doing and started their own ESP Bill of Rights campaign. And so you can probably imagine there's been a ton of interest in these campaigns, and staff are spread thin, members are spread thin, everybody has their day job. And so we started this series so that anyone who wanted this information could get it. And at the end, we're hosting it in our Ed Community site. We will share these slides. They have tons of resources to share with you. And so for ESPs that are interested in starting something like this in their state, we will have all the resources for you. So that's sort of how we got here tonight. Okay, next slide, please. In the meantime, at the Representative Assembly this summer in July, there was an NBI that was passed, which was NBI 29, which you'll see in the blue there. I'm not going to read it to you, but basically it's, ESPs want NEA to make sure that our communities, our school board members, our colleagues know who ESPs are, how they help students succeed, and what their professional needs are. At the same time, ESPs at the RA lobbied and advocated to have an addition to NEA's legislative agenda. This is our national legislative agenda, and what they advocated for was to establish a national Bill of Rights for ESPs, to say that, at NEA, to any politician who will listen to us on the Hill, that this is what we stand for ESPs. And so Our ESP Careers Committee, which is a subcommittee of the board of directors, then took that charge to build this ESP Bill of Rights. And so we are in the data collection phase, and you will, at the end, we'll share a link where you can share your voice and help us understand what your needs are, help us understand what you think should be included in a national Bill of Rights. And our ESP Careers Committee is taking this work very seriously. And we'll take that feedback and build what will soon be the national ESP Bill of Rights. But the Bill of Rights is really happens at the local and state level to be very successful. And I think you'll hear some more about that tonight. So next slide, please. So before we get started, I just want to do a very short introduction of our presenters, and thank you so much for spending time with us this evening and sharing all of your hard work and knowledge with ESPs all over the country. Oh, good, we have the chat feature working. Thank you, Dorothy. So tonight from MSCA, we are joined by Cindy Porter, who is a paraprofessional. She's also a local president, and she will share a little bit more about herself in a moment. We have Stacy Taman, who is a clerical professional and also a local full-time release local president. And we are joined by Sean McKillop. Sean is the full-time ESP coordinator from MSCA. So I will turn it over to the three of you, and thank you again.
All right. I'm very excited to be here. Cindy and Stacy, is there anything you want to lead off with before we dive right in? No?
No, I think we covered it.
All right. Oh, well, I'll say this. Cindy and Stacy are also the co-chairs of our ESP committee, which we're going to talk a lot about and how critical our committee has been in moving this work both internally and externally in Maryland. But a couple of things to know about MSCA that gives a little context to this campaign. So we are a collective bargaining state. There are certain things that come along with that, limits to that or pluses to that, like any state. We have 75,000 members in Maryland. 12,000 of them are ESP. And the struggle we've had for a number of years is our ESP membership has been stuck at around 50%. It's been in the high 40s, where our certificated membership has been in the 80s. We have 21 different locals. We have county school districts, so our locals are by county. 21 of those locals have ESPs in them. And actually 11 of them are standalone locals, like both Stacy and Cindy's locals, where the ESPs are separate from the certificated. 10 of our locals, though, have actually merged with their certificated into one local union. They do all have separate contracts, but they are one organization that have one president, one board of directors, etc. You probably heard Stacy is our one and only and first full-time released ESP president in the state of Maryland, where all of our teacher presidents across the state have our full-time release. We have only one, and we're working to increase that. But again, we have about 12,000 members statewide. And before we got into this campaign, the last bit of context to give you, which has guided our work, is we did a lot of targeting in locals, right? We would pick 2 or 3 locals every year to target for membership, maybe some collective bargaining things, and they would have some successes, right? They would grow their membership, but what would happen, we would see locals on the other side of the state bleed, right? And that's where we kind of had this situation. We were stuck in around the high 40s and 50% statewide in our membership because we didn't have any statewide unifying campaign or effort or issues that really drove our ESP activism. And so that's one of the things that this campaign has done, has been something that engaged all of our members and all of our potential members. So where did we start? Where are we going? What does this look like? And we've been looking at this campaign in phases, right? And like I said, this is both an internal and an external campaign. Internal in our organization, where we're activating our ESPs and shining a light on our issues, along with marching on the boss, right? It's also not a 1-year campaign. We talk about this is a 5-year campaign. We just had our representative assembly in Ocean City this last week, and we had kicked this campaign off last year in the same place. So we're really a year into a 5-year campaign. So one of the lessons that we've realized is that we didn't dig this hole of being kind of stuck in the place that we are over 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years, right? This is something that's happened over a couple of decades. If we're going to really move forward, it's going to take at least 5 years to get where we need to be, both in terms of our activism and our membership. So to kind of break down some of these things, right? And talking about phase 1, like I mentioned, we all collectively bargain, but we really hadn't done a good job of coordinating our bargaining, right? We kind of all our locals would have our monthly meetings, but we all went off on our corners and we basically did our negotiations and we did the best we could. But one of the charges for the committee was to create bargaining goals, right? We had a number of charges that we really hadn't been doing. We've been doing some really good things, but not the sort of work we needed to do. I've been in this position for 3 years, and I realized if we were going to get anywhere, the first thing we needed to do was coordinate and communicate better with our local presidents and with our committee, right? So the first thing that I did was I almost felt like a talent scout to look for new members for the committee that were just awesome advocates and organizers. Like I mentioned, we had Stacy get on the committee, our first full-time release ESP. Our current ESP of the year, Ivory Smith, we got him on the committee. Not only is he an awesome local president, he's also president of his local NAACP, right? One of our committee members, Sam Walters, is a retired attorney who used to work for the NAACP. So he's an awesome advocate, right? Cindy Porter, who's going to tell you more about herself, she has a long history of working in her local and wanting to be really excited about this work. So we started rebuilding our committee with folks that were organizers and advocates so we could do this work. And the first thing we did is when we put together these bargaining goals, is we realized, looking at a lot of our contracts, that some of the things that were holding back our locals were old, outdated contract language in terms of how our local functions, right? So some of these topics included how can we have our local presidents and UDs visit at schools without the superintendent or necessarily the principal finding reasons not to let them come do lunch or after school visits, right? Getting lists of our locals, right? Having really good language on the school system, producing our bargaining, our bargaining unit list in their emails and phone numbers, all those things. We had really outdated language that didn't allow us to get that information so we could use it in an effective way, right? We still have language in our contracts about how folks sign up their membership, right? We all are now starting to sign up members through online and through electronically. We still had a lot of language where our local school systems were saying it had to be a signed form on file in HR before they would recognize them as members, right? So not only did we want to have a living wage, collective bargaining goals and healthcare goals, but we really needed to fix some of these structural problems that were holding our locals back. So our first round of bargaining goals, and we're working on updating them for year 2, which we're in now, was just dealing with some of these structural things, along with calling for a living wage and healthcare for all of our members. What we also heard from our local presidents, right, is the bargaining goals can't just be a topic. Go get a living wage, right? You can see on the screen, when we put these together, we worked on not just identifying topics, but legal references. So when you're at the table, you can have those ready to go. Talking points, possible pushback from the school system at the table, organizing strategies. So our bargaining guide has all those suggestions so folks can take that to the table, not feel like we're reinventing the wheel 21 different times in all of our different locals. So we can all take the same approaches at the table. So again, we've set the goal, and you can see on the screen that we should be negotiating at least a $30 hour minimum wage by the end of the decade. So phase one, rebuild the committee and set some bargaining goals, right? So now we have, as you heard before, we started talking about, well, if I'm going to a school and I'm trying to advocate and excite and engage our members, and you pull out your bargaining goals and say, well, one of our bargaining goals is full-time release president language, which we need, right? But that's not going to get a non-member really excited to march on the boss to fight for full-time release president goals. So we heard this idea of the Bill of Rights. We thought we needed to create this statewide campaign, and it has to be something that our members see themselves in. That if we're gonna get 12,000 ESPs who are members and another 12,000 to be engaged in some sort of campaign, it has to be issues that they see, and it has to be, they have to see themselves in the process, right? So the committee with our staff, we sat down and we said, all right, we're gonna write this Bill of Rights. But we said 100 times, and this was kind of one of our guiding stars, the committee could get together on a Saturday over pizza and write a Bill of Rights. It'd be great. Or Stacy and Cindy as co-chairs, they could have wrote a Bill of Rights. It would have been great. Or all the uniserves in Maryland could have wrote a Bill of Rights, but that wouldn't matter. If we did it that way, the Bill of Rights was not going to be worth the paper it was printed on, right? We needed to engage as many members as we could in drafting a Bill of Rights if it was gonna be worthwhile. So we did three things. And the first thing that we did is we did member polling, right? Scientific polling. MSCA does this every year. Is MSCA on the right track or the wrong track? Do you know who your building rep is? Who are you going to vote for, et cetera, et cetera. But for the first time since I had been around, we got MSCA, our state affiliate, to do just ESP polling and also to do ESP focus groups. So they engaged almost 700 members on that and asking them a lot of questions, not only just what issues most important to you, what do you want to see in a Bill of Rights, but also things like, do you want to be called an ESP, right? How do you identify in terms of as an educator, or do you want to be called a education support professional, or all the things, right? And so we took that first set of data, right? So then the next thing we did is we created a survey. And so asking some of the questions that the polling did, but more in an organizing lens, right? So what issues do you want to see in a Bill of Rights, but what are you willing to do about it, right? What are you willing to come to a training? Are you willing to come to a school board meeting and speak? Like, what are you interested in doing? But also, what's your best email address? What's your best phone number? All those communication things, because we knew if we're eventually get to the point where we're going to march on the boss, or we're going to go to Annapolis and have a big lobby day, we need to keep track of how many of our ESPs are engaged in this campaign, right? So we created the organizing survey. And we did the traditional thing we do. We emailed it out. We sent it to the locals. Not many people filled it out, right? We started going to locals asking. But the one thing we did that really got some traction, and we learned, and something we suspected anyways, that our support staff really communicate well through social media. We took $10,000 of our budget, and we ended up spending $9,000 of it. And we hired a vendor to do targeted social media ads, right? So Stacy and I and some other staff, we sat around one day at a conference and we worked on these, and we had 4 different messages, but we worked with this outside vendor, and it was not just on Facebook, it was on TikTok and Instagram and whatever Twitter's called now. We did all the different things. We ended up getting these ads seen by 140,000 people. And we had over 700 of our folks fill out our survey, right? Which, again, we have 12,000 members. I wish it was 12,000 that filled out the survey, the organizing survey, but that's the most I had seen ESPs participate something in a long time. So this really started creating a buzz where people were seeing this and sharing it and filling out the survey, starting talking about, hey, there's something going on with ESPs, and started to really generate that buzz. So the first way, again, polling. The second way was this organizing survey and really being creative and getting it in front of our people. And then the third, and I'm about to excuse me, I think there's something going around. About to pass it on to Cindy here. The third way that we reached out is we thought we really wanted to do some in-person listening sessions. Bring our ESPs together and just talk about it, right? Talk in a room about what they wanted to see in a Bill of Rights and and how we were going to make this a real campaign. We originally were going to have 4. We ended up having 13 listening sessions. So I'm going to pass it to Cindy to talk about our experiences as a committee and how we ran the listening sessions, how they were really successful.
Thank you, Sean. Good evening, everyone. My name is Cindy Porter, and as Lisa said, there is something going around. I am a special education paraprofessional from Carroll County, Maryland. I am in my 25th year, and I, like many of you, am an advocate simply because I have personally experienced a lot of what we're trying to fight for. I'm not your normal union person or your union president. I wasn't active in the union for a long time because I was a single mother. And for 14 years, I worked 2 jobs. And for 12 years, I worked 3 jobs. And then came the point in time, I work in an elementary school and have been working at the elementary level my entire career. Then came the time that our principal in my school said that they were going to put some cameras in a specialized program that I was working in with the most severe behavioral and emotionally challenged kids in our county. And we were told that that was for our protection. And at that point, I said, I don't care what it costs to join my union. I need to join. And that brought me to advocacy for what we do, because we all know that we don't earn the money that we deserve for what we do. And I can tell you personally that one of the most powerful things that I have done in my career as a part of the ESP organizing committee was to be a part of these listening sessions. We held 13 total sessions across the state. We hit every corner of the state on purpose. We had 275 total attendees. We started out with regions and then went into individual locals after that. And we would take a group of our committee members to whatever meeting we were having, listening session. And we were talking about what we were thinking about, creating a Bill of Rights. What would you want on it? What would you think that you'd want on it? And we came up with some generalized topics. And at that point, we put chart paper around the room with the different ideas of what was important to people to be in a Bill of Rights. We gave each attendee 5 stickers, and we told them that they needed to place their stickers in at least 2 different categories, but after that, they could place any of the stickers. If you wanted to put 3 in one category and 2 in another, that was absolutely fine, or 4 in one. After seeing what our members at the listening session thought were important to them, we took the top 2 or 3 items and then formed listening groups. And we had questions that we went to these attendees with in terms of, we wanted their personal stories. We wanted to hear, why is this important to you? Why is this something that needs to be a part of a Bill of Rights for our entire state? Talking right now, I'm getting chill bumps because we heard stories that echoed things that we do every day and we see every day, but we also saw stories and heard stories of people who are working as bartenders at night while their children are home sleeping so they can support their family. They're Uber drivers. We had people that we were consoling who were in tears because they're getting hit or had physical issues on the job with students and have sustained injuries. It ran the gamut, but it was incredibly emotionally and spiritually powerful for me to be a part of this. And we came away with a vast amount of information. And we took that information, and as I said, it wasn't just from one area, it was from across our state. So we had a great representative section of ESPs from across the state. Say, for instance, in my ESP local only covers the assistant category to include paraprofessionals, and also our clerical category. We have 1 licensed practical nurse because our certificated side has taken the nurses in our county is switching over to RNs. But in Stacy's local encompasses many more categories of education support professionals than mine do. So that was a real eye-opening experience, and one that helped drive us to hone in on what was important for all ESPs across the state of Maryland. we talked about on the left is the picture about putting their stickers on the different chart papers around the room. And then we did this little compilation of words that kept coming up in our discussions. And you can see living wage, child, family. You know, what do I do with my family? I've got to earn a living for my family. I can't. I don't earn a salary. I have to have more money. I need equal pay. I'm a para. My job's important too. Respect. We need respect for what we do, and our job shouldn't be revolving doors because we don't have the respect or the pay that we deserve.
Word cloud. That's what you're looking for, Cindy. The word cloud.
Yeah.
Word cloud. Yep. Yeah, we took very specific notes of all these conversations so we could really see what was the big issue, the issues that came forward. So Stacy, do you want to take it from here and talk about how we finalized this and then launched it into last year at our conference?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Stacy Taman. I am a 28-year education support professional with Calvert County Public Schools. I have been in the clerical area all 28 of those years. I've been an IEP clerk, a payroll clerk, a principal secretary, and most recently a human resources associate. I am currently serving as the full-time release president for the Calvert Association of Educational Support Staff. And I love the work that we have been doing on this committee. As Cindy said, as we talked and things started to unfold, we realized that even though our locals were structured very differently, we were facing the same type of issues: membership development. The members we had, either a few were carrying too much, there was apathy, all of these things. And as the committee really talked a lot and started to break things down, it was almost like peeling away the layers of an onion. And when we got down to the core, we realized that every local across the state were fighting the same issues within their locals. And we were like, why are we doing these individual fights? Like, if we band together and grow our power, think about how much more power our individual locals would have. So the listening sessions, like Cindy said, they were immensely rewarding. They were heavy, but people walked away from the listening sessions knowing they had been heard and knowing that they were not alone, that their experiences were not isolated, and that it was these are bigger issues, and that we needed to take them on at a much higher level than an individual. So as you can see on the screen, we prioritized the top 10 issues that came out of these listening sessions. Sean was absolutely right when he said we could have sat down and written these just as a committee. But because of the way we unfolded this campaign and brought in so many education support professional voices from across the state, when I look at this graphic, it has weight to me. There are so many voices behind what you see on this screen. And we're very excited about rolling it out. Some of our local unions have some of these items, but none of them have all of the items. So we crafted it in a way where every local could see themselves in it in one way or another. Like in my local, I have several of these things already in place, but then there are others that don't. But there is absolutely something that every single local union could grab onto, hang on to, and then build from. Then we took our campaign to the MSEA convention stage, and we received such an overwhelming round of support from all of our colleagues, regardless of if they were in the certificated union or the administrator union or the ESP union. Everyone was jubilant, is kind of a weird word, but they were really excited that the education support professionals had such a powerful campaign that everyone could get behind. There was nothing in those Bill of Rights that people could not support. Everybody was in support of everything. Oh, so the pictures that are on the screen right now is a combination. You can see Cindy right there in the middle at the bottom with our bill. But it is a combination of certificated supporters. We have some NEA directors on there, MSEA board of directors on there. The lower corner is the MSEA treasurer. So this is a big mix of MSEA members who came out to sign our Bill of Rights. And then we had a really big person endorse our Bill of Rights, our state superintendent. He had been invited to speak at the convention, and our MSEA president said, so by the way, let me show you the Bill of Rights. And then as he was exiting the stage, we were able to ask him if he would endorse us, and he did.
So as Stacey alluding to, we had everyone at our convention sign and endorse the Bill of Rights. Like I was mentioning, it's if you saw on to go back, you can see even on our you can even see there's a little QR code on the banner that everyone signed, and they had, along with signing it, they would go to a website to put in their information. So we continue to build our list of folks that that have endorsed it. Why is an endorsement important? Obviously, it's important because it's a public statement of support that you believe in these values. But the real important thing is the conversation that goes into it, and that we're tracking that so we know that our movement is growing. So now that we've had all our delegates, all of our presidents endorse it, the two things we went to next is we wanted every local across the state, both teacher, both merged and ESP standalone locals, at their rep meetings to vote to endorse the Bill of Rights. And then we started having our individual work sites going through our building reps, hold 10-minute meetings where they got their work site to endorse the Bill of Rights. And what we created was a toolkit. And what will be available to everyone on here is a copy of this toolkit. So please steal our ideas, right? But we wanted to make this so easy for reps who've maybe never held a 10-minute meeting before, or a building that doesn't have a building rep, feel comfortable holding a meeting, talking to their folks, getting to endorse it. So just like we had that giant scroll, we created this poster. You can see it also has the Bill of Rights at the bottom. It has a QR code, but we also sent to each local talking points. We sent to each, and in each work site, talking points, a script for the person leading the meeting to go through, a checklist on how to have a successful meeting, excuse me, an article on the Bill of Rights that was in our state newsletter, and all of these materials that they could use to have this meeting. Now, what we asked everyone to do is once they had their 10-minute meeting and they signed their poster and hung it in a building, we also asked folks to put it online, put it on social media, wherever it is. And there's a hashtag going, hashtag ESP Bill of Rights. So you can go on Twitter right now. You can see some of the buildings and some of the pictures from our conventions. But also to keep attendance going, right? We told our folks, if you do a paper sign-in, old school, you can take a picture of that or type it up and send it in, and we would keep track of it. Or we use the Reach app, and the Reach app logs directly into the van. And so we have uploaded our members and non-members in there. So in the toolkit was directions on how someone can download that to their phone, pull up their school, and take attendance that way, right? But again, building that list is critical in all the buildings and all the locals that endorsed it. So you can see more pictures, but as at the end of the school year last year, we got up to 153 work sites, and that equaled 2,358 of our members endorsed the Bill of Rights. We were successful in getting all 21 of our ESP locals to endorse it. And we did have some pushback. There was some concerns. Not every ESP local wanted to endorse it right away, but part of the organizing was we did get to that goal and going to their building rep meetings and endorse the Bill of Rights. As of now, we're up to 181 buildings have now endorsed it, and we're continuing to push this again. Because if we're going to march on the boss, we have to have our members know that this is a thing and know that they can be a part and how their voice is important to the campaign. So another thing that we did last year, and this came out of our listening sessions, is having a day of action every month. And it kind of ended up being mostly virtual, but every month we would pick a different issue or something along the Bill of Rights, and we would broadcast it. So the first thing we did was on Groundhog Day, we had a meme, and basically we put it out there with the hashtag and also a link to sign up to get more information about the Bill of Rights. We did a little bit, we did flyers and another post on Valentine's Day. And then later in March, in Stacy's local, one of our really awesome activist members, she did a social media takeover of MSCA's Twitter page, where she did a day in the life of being an ESP. And so every 15 minutes to half an hour, she would tweet what she was doing. So here I am getting up, I'm going to work, I'm prepping the meals, I'm doing, and she's a food service professional. Here's how we're serving the food, here's how we do cleanup, here's this, here's that. Oh, now I have to go to my second job. And so we did that twice, and that got a lot of views. Also, that had this social media day in the life of an ESP, but it all filtered back to the hashtag, and it all filtered back to the link where you can go and get more information and sign up to be a Bill of Rights activist. So how are we going to win, right? And this is something that that's a long conversation with our members. And I'll say we have a culture in Maryland where we've been really successful legislatively with some of the things we've done, right? And obviously we're a collective bargaining state also. So some of the issues are going to be done legislatively. Some of them are going to be through negotiations. Almost every issue is a little bit of both. We are talking right now this year about what legislative items from the Bill of Rights are going to be part of our legislative agenda that we'll be finalizing in the next couple of weeks. These conversations we just had at the RA. We're looking at sponsoring a bill on outsourcing. We're also looking on how we can strengthen and expand negotiate bargaining rights around seniority, especially in terms of transfers and promotions. That's also a living wage issue. But how do we have the legislative piece that also is in partner with our strategic contract campaigns around our bargaining goals, right? So that's how we're going to get these things done. And it's something that's going to take, again, a couple of years, but that's how we're viewing how we're going to make these things a reality. So to turn it over to Stacy, who's done, and no surprise, of all of our ESP locals that have the most endorsements, Stacy's local is one of the locals that have the most. But I'll turn it over to her to roll out how she's been engaging her buildings to get endorsements, and then also how they're turning that into their collective bargaining campaign this year.
Thank you. So this was December. We began in December of 2022. My full-time presidency was contingent on a grant from NEA and that partnered with MSCA. And so we really had to do a strong membership drive so that we could sustain the full-time presidency once the grant ran out. So we had built a building campaign where we went to visit every one of our buildings between December and February. We're not that large of a county, maybe, I guess comparatively, 26 buildings that we visited between December and February. And during these visits, we had lunch, we sat, we chatted, we tried to build our membership, but through these conversations, we were talking about the ESP Bill of Rights, that this was coming, that this was going to be a big deal, that there was a statewide campaign where we were connecting all of the education support professionals to build our power to start moving legislation and boards of ed to recognize how vital we are to the school's day and moving our issues forward. So that's what we did. We kind of laced our conversations with the Bill of Rights and what was coming. So then beginning in March, we rolled out our 10-minute meetings where we had a 10-minute meeting that solely focused on the Bill of Rights, and we were able to dig in a little bit more, had a lot of questions that were asked, and it was exciting to see because individuals could see themselves in the Bill of Rights, which is what we had really hoped for because of the way we wrote them coming out of the listening sessions. So as we delivered the Bill of Rights and people were connecting with it, we were like, okay, this is this was the end result. And overwhelmingly, people wanted to sign that scroll. We have a signed scroll for every one of our schools in the county. And we were moving toward organizing for a big grand rally where all of the scrolls came together in a big presentation. We had a little budget hiccup that derailed us a little bit, but we're getting back on track. But that's the beauty of these types of campaigns. They are not going to unfold seamlessly. They're not going to have their little bumps in the road, right? You just have to bounce back. You have to pivot, and then you have to, redirect, but always bring it back to the issues that are at hand, which is what we had been able to do. Now my local is starting negotiations. We'll be at the negotiations table in less than a month. And the proposals that we have crafted link to every one of the top 10 priorities of the ESP Bill of Rights. So while our local is not necessarily completely finished rolling out the ESP Bill of Rights with 100% endorsements, we're not letting that slow down or keep us from weaving it into the other pieces of work that we're doing. It's just in my mind, I feel like we're creating an even broader awareness to it, because yes, there's the specific campaign, the ESP Bill of Rights, but also here's our negotiation tactics. And oh, you know what? Isn't that interesting? Oh, I can see living wage, and I can see fighting against privatization and, the affordable health care just in the different proposals that we are that we're writing. And I have to be honest, it has really helped us remain focused in prioritizing our language proposals. So that's where we are.
Excellent. Okay, so what else have we done? This last summer, we did an ESP organizing summer. And we took about 100 grand and we hired, I guess it ended up, we had some drop off. We originally hired, I think 14, but we ended up with 12 of our ESP members to work 20 hours a week. We paid them $25 an hour, and they were going to go out and do organizing around the Bill of Rights, specifically on non-members, and not new hire non-members, but longtime holdouts. And this was mostly done through door knocking. What we did interviews, we did a posting, we did a number of trainings with them. They had daily check-ins, right, where they had to get on Zoom. Monday we did a longer training, which was more professional development and organizing training, and then the rest of the week they were just half an hour trainings. They had to report their numbers, and we hired them region, right? 2 of them were actually from Stacy's local, and we would give them regional turf. They got a mileage stipend, but they went out and had organizing conversations with some of our hardest to get members. So they ended up, we set the goal and we achieved it. They knocked on over 4,000 doors this summer over an 8-week period. They ended up having 774 one-on-ones, but they got 480 folks to sign and endorse the Bill of Rights, and they got 62 new members. This was really hard work, right? The one thing that we really learned from this campaign, that it's not rocket science to do this organizing, right? As long as we're working on the issues that are important to ESPs, they were having really good connections and really being successful when they got people to answer their doors. The one thing that really was the biggest connection, if you go to our MSCA website and go to our Bill of Rights tab, you can see a lot of our information, and you can see a map of all the locals and buildings that have endorsed it. But we have our living wage calculator on there. That's based off the MIT living wage calculator. All of our organizers, when they knocked on a door, they have that living wage calculator ready to go. Whenever they engage someone that wasn't interested in talking with them or were hesitant to be engaged, when they pulled out that living wage calculator and said, well, let's look at this because this is what we're fighting for, that opened up so many eyes, and that's what got the majority of endorsements. Again, some of these are 20-year non-members but were endorsing the Bill of Rights. So this was a successful program that we did to really expand places that we weren't having successful when we're going to buildings and locals and members that weren't interested in being organized. organized. So we had a really successful summer program. And one other thing that this actually just happened, we did this at our convention this last week, where we created this banner and we had folks, ESPs that were at convention, come to our booth and pull out that living wage calculator. And they got to fill out a little sticker. Do you make a living wage or no? And it was anonymous. And then you could put down how many years you worked, what county you worked in, and what your yearly salary. So you can see on here some of these places: 31 years of service, 38K a year; 28 years of service, 38K a year; 5 years, 37. And this was really eye-opening for a lot of our certificated members that saw this. What? You've been here this long? And that's another lessons learned, that ESPs are their best, are the best people to tell their story, but they have to tell this story, right? That this is how little we're paying our bus drivers. This is how little we're paying our folks. But what's really great about this banner is we're going to plan to take this to our negotiation sessions around the state. So when locals are negotiating, we'll have the local fill out all these stickers and we will hang it up behind the negotiations team so the school board's negotiations team can see all this as they're negotiating. So, and we're going to take it to school board meetings. We're going to take it like that. So we're going to create a bunch of different banners like this, but we've got tons of stickers where folks can create this visual. So just wanted to show that because that's one thing we just did that's really opened a lot of eyes and got folks talking about what we're fighting for. So what's happening next, right? Along with that, as Stacy mentioned, we have a YRO grant in 4 of our locals. Cindy's local is one of them. Stacy's local is one of them. We have 2 other locals where we're continuing that paid member organizer program that are supporting the bargaining goals, supporting rebuilding some of our rep structures, getting out in their locals where we really haven't scratched the surface in terms of building endorsements, right? They're only working 5 hours a week because they're busy with their day jobs, but they have a weekly check-in with me on Monday nights, and I give them turf, give them schools to go out, get endorsements, have more organizing conversations around the Bill of Rights. And, I guess Stacy mentioned in some of these 4 locals where they're going into some really tough bargaining campaigns, how they can support their contract campaigns along with the Bill of Rights embedded into that. Right. We also have 3 locals where we have not hired ESP members, but these locals who have done 1 or 2 building endorsements, but they might have a new president or they have a new board of directors, or they're really looking to step up and dive into the building endorsements. So we've worked with the 3 locals to work on some campaign plans just around getting all of their building endorsements done this school year. So we have 3 locals we're targeting with that. But we're also starting to have conversations about how we're going to externally raise awareness of the Bill of Rights. So one of the things, instead of just having our typical lobby day this year, but having a bigger event where when we are talking to our elected officials, asking them, just like we got the state superintendent, asking them to endorse the Bill of Rights, how we're getting school boards to pass local resolutions supporting the Bill of Rights or endorsing the Bill of Rights. We actually have gotten a couple of our PTAs have now endorsed the Bill of Rights, which is exciting. We were talking to other unions, both that represent school employees, but unions outside of the public schools, to endorse the Bill of Rights, and there's also interest in that. But how are we continuing to find more allies in the fight as we raise awareness? Again, we have as much a deep, I don't know how else to say this, but a deep enough bench so when we're marching on the boss, everyone's engaged and able to do so. But the other things that I mentioned, we talked about updating our bargaining goals, kind of like a 2.0. But also how are we engaging on our lobbying around what items of the Bill of Rights are on our legislative agenda as we work to expand, especially those bargaining things that we need to do. So that's the year ahead. Like I said, we just got done with convention, and so we're full speed ahead on all these things. But that's what's next. So lessons learned. And some of these things are self-evident, but you have to remind yourself, right? How are you going to have a successful campaign? Ask your support staff what they actually want and listen to them. That can be the easiest and sometimes hardest at the same time thing to do, right? If the members don't feel that their issues are being represented, they're not going to be involved, right? As I mentioned, Organizing is not rocket science. It's just hard work, right? There's no magic potion, right? All you need is people who are engaged and enthusiastic on the right issues, right? Stacy alluded to this, right? Don't let perfection be the enemy of progress. Stacy is out there in her local doing all the things, right? But sometimes curveballs come, you readjust, and then you keep pushing forward. It's not a straight line, right? Branding is important, right? And we've kind of gone with this, the school bus colors, with our logos and things, but it really, really is important in connecting with folks. We gave out another 100 t-shirts at convention around the Bill of Rights. If they filled out that sticker, the living wage sticker, they got a t-shirt, right? Everybody loves t-shirts. Everybody loves buttons, but that stuff really connects with folks. So do some of that stuff, right? How are you keeping your list and building your list, right? That's always important. So you know that you're growing your movement, but also when you're really going to do an action, how can you communicate to people effectively, right? Be creative in reaching out to support staff, right? The one lesson I've heard Cindy and Stacy both say, ESP locals are not the same as teacher locals. So you cannot just take the teacher local set up and expect the ESP locals to work the same way, right? ESPs have different challenges, and you have to be aware of that and be creative in how you're engaging, right? Debrief everything. And that's what I learned this summer when we did our 8-week program. Not only is debriefing important because it's lessons learned, but also just building that camaraderie and that sense of community, and that we're all in this together by having regular debriefs on what we're trying to do is really important. And you heard me say this earlier, we didn't get here overnight. It's going to take time to overcome, but we're going to get there because it's the right thing to do. So our contact information is up there. I'm going to give the final word to Stacy and Cindy on how we're going to move forward and all the good work that we're doing.
I'm
Go ahead,
really
Stace.
I am really excited about next steps. I'm excited about being able to link our negotiations proposals with all of the things that we put into the Bill of Rights. Listening is absolutely vital. It is what really launched this campaign, because we gained so many supporters simply because we took the time to listen. People cried during our listening sessions because they felt like they had finally been heard. So listen, bounce back from setbacks. And for me, I'm super stoked to be able to use this campaign as one of the pillars of my negotiations coming up in just a few weeks.
Couldn't agree more with Stacy. This being a part of this work has been empowering. It has also been heart-wrenching at times, but I think everyone on this call knows that everybody just wants to be seen and heard, and somebody to listen. And that's the most important thing that I took away from this. You know, we all go through our difficulties during the day, whether it's student behavior issues, whether it's personal things, working more than one job. But at the end of the day, we want somebody to listen to us and to see us for where we are and what we're doing. So this is really exciting work that we're doing. We're going to continue to listen. We're going to continue to build upon what we've already done. And we've got more people on board to help us with this work. And we're just as excited. You know, as an ESP who worked more than one job for several years, I had the opportunity to testify in front of the state legislature this past spring. It was one of the most empowering things I had ever done. And I used to be ashamed of what I earned. I'm not ashamed anymore. I'm mad. I want to do something about it. I want to help other people. As a career professional in my 25th year, I just now am still under a living wage, even with the raise and the step increase that I got this year. So that's not the way it should be. We're professionals. We are bedrock of our school systems. No matter what your position is, you are an education support professional. And we need to spread that word, and we need to spread it widely and use that to gain our power, to take that power to our bargaining tables and beyond.
Sean, could I add one more thing?
You can have as much as you want.
It'll be really quick. Like Cindy said, you do start to develop a fire for this type of work. But I would recommend to any team that decides to embark on this journey that as you go through the journey and as you speak with individuals, make sure you take time to listen to yourself too. That was something that we did as a group when things got pretty heavy. We talked about how heavy it was to make sure that we were all handling that energy and emotion appropriately, because you carry it, but it's not yours. So I won't go too far down that path, but as you do this work, make sure you're checking in with yourself as well.
Thank you. All right, that's all for us. I guess we pass it back to you, Lisa.
Thank you all so much. I can't express to you how informative this has been, and just really deeply appreciate you all taking time tonight. We have 2 questions and 1 comment in our Q&A so far. So how are you capturing and celebrating your wins? I know there were quite a few examples. If you want to just summarize those again, maybe.
I guess for me, I think part of go back to what Stacy said, in terms of our core group of committee folks, we had a day where we went out and had a holiday dinner that was really nice. We also took all of our organizers out to an Orioles game. So making sure you plan some of those social things to celebrate that are not, where you're not focused on the intensity of X, Y, or Z is important. I think in terms of capturing it, in terms of what are deliverable and measurables, I think building your list, how many buildings have endorsed, and being public about that. So again, if you go to the website and see our map, we have both one icon for each local that endorses the Bill of Rights, but then also a different icon for each building. Continuing to put that out there is important. But I think also then having our check-ins, having our committee meetings that are regular, where not only are you talking about what was challenging, but also went well in the last week or the last day of whatever turf or organizing effort that you're doing. I think a little bit of everything is important. So Stacy and Cindy.
I was going to add to that, wins come in different shapes and sizes, right? So you can have great big wins that everybody recognizes, or you can kind of have some internal wins where you're like, we just had a whole lot of people turn out to a Board of Education meeting and we've never done that before. And so one of the biggest wins was the fact that so many people identified with this, that they started to understand how their voice mattered in the process. And so they started paying attention a little bit more. And in Calvert, where we have, or in Maryland, we have the blueprint for Maryland's future, and it specifically speaks to certificated staff and very minimally with education support professionals. One of the biggest things was a $60,000 starting salary by a certain time. Individual school systems have to show the salary growth for the certificated staff, and we were left out of that. But as we were rolling out this ESP Bill of Rights and talking about living wages and how percentage increases don't really push us ahead, getting equal percentage increases as the teacher, oh, sorry about my dog, doesn't really help us grow very quickly. I am so sorry. He's very upset by somebody walking by. They started to understand, and we had record numbers at a Board of Ed meeting and record numbers at a county commissioners meeting, and we were able to negotiate pay increases outside of our contract because of their advocacy.
And I was just going to add, I agree with everything Stacy says. Excuse me. And as we said before, this is heavy work. And so the wins, it's not necessarily all the big things. Look for the little things, because the little things matter. The little things can keep you going when you've had a really bad day and something that you were trying to do fell through. But if you look at that little nugget, the person who came up to you and said, thank you for speaking on behalf of me at the Board of Education meeting, or, you know, I don't earn a living wage on the living wage calculator, and this is outrageous. You know, those little things, the person who you reach, because we tend to get so isolated with what we do and the demands on what we do, especially as education support professionals. There are a lot of demands on us, and we're the forefront, you know, with community and with kids. And so don't get stuck in that area, especially, you know, I'm not a full-time release president, and my full-time job is as a special education paraprofessional. And, you know, every day I'm in with kids who are struggling at home, parents who are having difficulties, behaviors that are out of control. Look for that person who comes up and says, thank you for working for us for the Bill of Rights, or we appreciate what you're doing. And as I'm saying that to you now, I'm getting chill bumps on my arms, because it is those little things that will help propel you and keep you going and moving forward, no matter what's in your way.
That's awesome. Thank you. One of the comments that is in the Q&A, I'll just share it with you. Not a question, but this is phenomenal. So inspiring. One of the questions is, has this attracted new members? And I know you talked a little bit about that. Share a little more.
So celebration at convention, we have an ESP luncheon, and we announced this last year at our conference, but also our membership is at a 13-year high for ESPs. And that is because of this. And if you do the right organizing work and you engage your folks on the right issues, the membership will happen, both by design and both just because people are getting on board, because the excitement travels on its own. So yeah, we are at a 13-year high statewide.
That's amazing.
And even though people, go ahead, Stace.
You were first. I'll step back.
I was going to say, even though people may not be at the front lines and directly involved, this campaign is giving them energy that they maybe didn't have or see before. And they're reaching out to others, especially as we deal, you know, every year since the pandemic, educators say, this has got to be a better year. This has got to be a better year. And we keep seeing more impact of the pandemic as we go on, and the economic and social and racial situations that are dealing with in our country. And so, you know, you may not have people on the forefront, but they're starting to talk because of this ESP Bill of Rights, and word of mouth is everything.
I will add that members in my local find that this is something they can hold on to, and it gives them hope, especially moving into negotiations where they just kind of felt like they have been discarded and not cared about for so long. We have ESPs who are hanging in there to make, to see how this plays out, because they do have such faith in it. As far as membership, my local has really exploded with this. My summer organizers, so I'm a little local, I have less than 500 members, but they signed 36 new members over the summer alone, which for us is phenomenal. 4 years ago, we were at 280, and we are now like at 498. I want 500 so bad. We have just grown very quickly. And a large part of that is due to the ESP Bill of Rights.
That's super impressive. I'm rooting for those last two to get you over the 500. What has been the key to securing support of the teachers for the Bill of Rights?
Are you waiting for me, Sean?
Go ahead. I mean, I have some thoughts, but why don't you go ahead?
Well, I was going to say that in my part of Maryland, for the certificated staff, it was a no-brainer. the human elements of this campaign. Their eyes were opened to things that they were not aware of. They had no idea that the paras in their classroom made less than half of what they were earning. And just that realization and awareness, there was literally no hesitation. So I think it was bringing awareness to, I'm surprised at how many people did not know how little ESPs made, but once they learned, they were 100% on board.
And Stacy, I'm going to piggyback on that. It's been really helpful and impactful. And for me, in the position that I am in my second year as an ESP local president, but telling my story. Even this past weekend at convention, I got up and told my story and told people what I made. And I can tell you, when I talk to certificated people in my building, when I'm in the workrooms with them, when I'm in the, when I'm in the hallways talking about issues that are going on, and I let them know that I earn less than a living wage. And after 24 years, I earn $35,000. They look at me and they go, no. And I went, yes. I said, I can't afford to support myself. And their eyes just get bulgy and their jaws drop. So telling our stories, making people aware, because a lot of our certificated counterparts aren't aware of where we are. I think there's just a general feeling that, oh, everybody's making a decent wage and we're not.
Yeah, I think telling your story is just so important. We make a lot of assumptions that people know what ESPs make, and it's outrageous, right? We actually just finished a webinar for our ESP Learning Network last week that will be up on our website soon on how to tell your story. So if anybody's looking for that training, it should be up in about probably within the next 2 weeks. And I'll put the link in the chat here, how to get to that. The other question was, where is the living wage calculator? And I put the link to that in the chat. I took that from your website, and I also put your website right there in the chat. There was a question about what were the lessons that you learned, and you had shared some of that in a slide. I don't know if that question came before you shared that or after. So yeah, thanks for going back to that. So there's the lessons learned. We don't need to go through them again, but I will say that this information will be posted on our Ed Community site, which if you go ahead, just 1 or 2 slides there, I want to talk about our survey. So you talked so much about member voice and how critical that was to building your Bill of Rights. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, our ESP Careers Committee is working on building a national Bill of Rights, and they want to hear your voice. They want your input. The survey is available in both English and Spanish. The links are here, as well as the QR codes. And Saul, my colleague Saul Ramos, put those in the chat as well in both English and Spanish. So please add your voice to that. And then the next slide, please. And all of the information, as well as a whole bunch more tools, is uploaded into our Ed Community site. This is an NEA member only website. The link and the QR code are there. When you go to that site, if you go to the files section, you'll see an MSEA folder, and everything from tonight's presentation, the PowerPoint, when we get the recording up, that will be there as well. And a lot of pieces of information from their toolkit. All right, next slide, please. And so to help us continue to do better for y'all, we would like to ask you to please take just 1 moment to fill out this quick survey. I think it's like 5 questions. It takes about 2 minutes by going to the link or the QR code there. And so in closing, I just want to, again, thank you, Sean and Cindy and Stacy. This has been extremely helpful, and I can feel the excitement. Just, people are really ready to make some change. We're moving from nice to strategic, right? And that's because of the work that you guys are just, you know, taking on and carving a path for people. So really, really appreciate you. And thank you to my colleague, Dorothy Boo, for doing the technical work for us tonight. And thank you all for joining us. We'll leave the slide up for the post-session survey and just ask you all to please go there and fill out the survey. And I'll put the link for our webinar on telling your story in the chat. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you so much.